Where is it? Here. Camacho, Brandon, hey guys, welcome back. I was just about to start giving the rundown of the plan for tonight, so good job tuning in at this exact moment. First things first, actually, let's go. I'm going to be using glue gun. This will be more for adhering the spine of the book, attaching it into the cover. Tight Bond. This is a PVA glue. PVA stands for polyvinyl acetate. That is the same type of glue that just white Elmer's school glue is. Most wood glues and carpenter glues are PVA glues. They're really good at binding woody, pulpy material, and that's what paper is. Paper is just really refined wood. And then the piece de la resistance is barge, and barge is a primarily a leather and rubber glue used mainly by leather workers and shoe repair, but it's really good in crafting. You paint the two surfaces you want to glue together, let it dry, and then when you stick them together, they're not coming apart. So it stays really flexible, and so it's really good for flexible type repairs. And since our latex is pretty much a rubber and it needs to flex and curve on the book, it's going to hopefully hold together pretty well. There's actually one tool that I am missing, and that is a pair of scissors, because we're going to have to clean up this edge. So let me plug in the glue gun. I'm going to run and grab a pair of scissors real quick, and then this will heat up, and then we can kind of start putting the first coat of barge down on the two surfaces. Glue gun's gonna start warming up, so just let me go grab my scissors real quick. There we go. So it looks like we have a new face in here. So Big Fudge, welcome. Hopefully you enjoy me probably gluing things together that are completely unintended, like my hands, probably the fabric, maybe a cat or two. So kind of catch everybody up in case you didn't make it to the last stream or you're new. The Necronomicon sculpt I've been working on for a few weeks. We did a clay sculpt of this design, and then did a hydrocal, which is a plaster mold, then painted in the latex into the mold and backed it with a fabric, and then painted with a concoction of Coleman Camp Fuel, rubber cement, and oil paints. And then that brought us to where we're at now, and we're going to attach it to the outside of the book, and hopefully this should be ready to present to somebody later in the week. Hey, RBP. Welcome, sir. And Narcraft. Hey. Actually, we are not done. We still got a ways to go, because we got to turn this into a sketchbook. And then after we have this all attached and it's held together, I still need to texture and paint the inside covers where everything attaches to make it a little more seamless. And this to me looks a little dull, and I almost feel like we could probably do another little bit of a black wash on it. I had to dust it with talcum powder to cut down on the tack. It's how you kind of finish latex rubbers, and it had a really unintended consequence of muting the piece a little bit. Had I really been paying attention to it, I probably would have done more drastic color changes underneath it, because it just kind of flattened it out. And down in the recesses of it, I don't know if you can really tell, but it's got that white junk in there. So I don't know, but we'll touch it up after we get the cover down on it. So let us flip on the detail cam. We're gonna have a lot of like macro movements today, so there's really not going to be as much of a need, I think, of getting in super duper close, but I'll try and do my best to show you some of the specifics when we are doing fine work. So yeah, first things first, we're just going to clean up the edge, get this this extra flashing off. It's also, I don't know if you can tell too, there is a little bit of a lip to the rubber, because when we painted it like this, right, it was painted face down, the edges that overhung the edge of the mold now stick up, so we kind of have to trim those out as well. You know what I was thinking? It's kind of silly for me to have this detail cam on my right side, because I'm always going to be blocking it with what I'm doing. So let's bring this around here. If that looks weird, let me know. I'm just going to fix the focus. Hold on. There we go. Look at that, nice full house tonight. So it's probably worth starting to talk about, what do we want to do for the next project? I have a feeling I'm going to try and actually stream tomorrow as well, because I have to make up for missing Tuesday, and then Friday. So we'll try and nail 3 days in a row if we can. I got to delete this song out of my library. So we should be pretty good to be finished up by this week. But next project, I was thinking about doing a sculpture, like a little bust. I think that'll be interesting. And then we can make some copies of that, and maybe I can send some out, maybe give some away or something. Be a little easier to do something interesting. I don't know. We'll see. But I just have to say, if you are not a Southern California local, you missed out on an absolutely wonderful heat wave we've been having. And last night was disgusting, like just disgusting. It was like mid to upper 80s at like 2 in the morning. I'm sure that's a bit of a boo-hoo for probably anybody who lives in different parts of like Texas or the like, but I live near the beach on purpose, and so we don't have to deal with weather like that. So Claptrap or Ender Dragon for the bust. Ender Dragon's a really interesting idea. I kind of like that. I feel like we could do... I kind of want to do the Cthulhu route, so you could make the Ender Dragon sitting on like a dirt block. But it would have to be really square, and I haven't done rigid stuff. Wait, sorry. I'm trying... looks out of focus to me. Config and autofocus. There we go. I haven't done sculpting where like doing really clean flat surfaces, so that might be a really interesting challenge. The other one, of course, would be do Claptrap, do Borderlands related, and really try and hit the SEO for the next Borderlands game right as it comes out. I don't know. Both are really good ideas. Yeah, the whole California coast just kind of got screwed when it came to heat. Normally, like, I live a good bit further south from LA. I'm about an hour and a half. And I work up there, and so when I'm driving home, being closer to the beach usually means that it gets cooler and nicer. Or actually, if it's too cold, it actually warms up because, you know, the ocean water kind of balances out your temperature. But so normally I don't suffer like most of the people at the office do because they live up and around there. And it actually got hotter. I don't know what it was. It was just sorcery or witchcraft of some sort of unpleasantness. It's kind of one of my general rules of thumb is to not live anywhere where the lack of air conditioning means you'll die. Oh, I think our glue gun is starting its drip. Usually knows it's ready. So the real trick when it comes to using glue guns is not to burn the crap out of yourself. Alright, so check it out. Here's what's going to happen. Here's the back. Here's the book cover. So this is just a sketchbook I picked up from Walmart. And I took it apart, I ripped the pages out, and then I soaked them in like a bag with coffee, and like I made like a really thick batch of coffee and put it in a Ziploc baggie and used it to stain the pages, and then dried it out in the oven. Easy way to get a really cool effect. You can't really leave the book intact because it actually ruins the glue that holds it in there, so you're gonna lose it no matter what. So what we need to do is affix it back in the book, and we'll do that one of the next steps. But first things first is we actually want to start putting the glue down for barge on the surface. It's a little uneven. It's okay, but you'll see how this can it's going to wrap, you know? It'll wrap like this, wrap like this. Oops. And then when it's all glued down and closed up, there's the look of the book. Pretty cool, huh? It actually looks really nice. Maybe we don't need to go back and do anything else to it. So what we have to figure out is kind of how do we want to handle this. This is a little bit of an extra flange I don't think we need, but this really does come out to the edge. So let's see, about there maybe. That's good. Let's favor that side, and also we'll wrap the edges in like this too. This part gets a little tricky because we have to glue this down, and then we need to glue in the pages, and then we need to glue in the edges. So it's going to be a bit of a multi-step process. But first things I want to do is we want to mark off where the glue is going to be so that we can kind of put it down smartly. This glue gun needs to be out of the way. So I think we decided this is how we're going to go. It should be fine. It doesn't really need to be perfect, because we can always trim, but I want to at least get an idea of where that glue needs to be, because I don't want to fully glue the whole back of it because we are going to be doing it in a multi-part process. So we're just going to glue inside where it attaches to the book cover first, and then worry about gluing the flaps down around the outside later. So there you go. That gives us our area to work with. So we're going to glue the whole back cover of the book and this surface. Sorry, Xing it out is usually it's just kind of a habit I get into about making sure I'm gluing the right side. Maybe it's a little bit like a surgeon marking the right foot to amputate. Now, most of the stuff we've been doing doesn't really need gloves. Like we probably should have been... napalm. Sorry, we got hot glue. We probably should have been wearing gloves when we were doing the painting because it's pretty toxic material. But I didn't, and that's bad, so don't do that. But for barge, you definitely want to appropriately cover up. Because it's toxic. I think it's the toluene in it, if I remember right. Don't quote me on that while I drop everything everywhere. Barge is like really hard to find in California specifically because of some of its chemicals that are in it. So I don't know if that gives you any idea of what we're working with. So just do this, we're gonna do them side by side at the same time. Like I was saying, this stuff is pretty analogous to, oh shit, we gotta mix it. It looks and smells like rubber cement. But it is most certainly not anything like rubber cement when it comes to holding things together. So, sorry, I didn't really get that on camera really well, but the consistency of it, there's like, it should be sort of an opaque color, and if it's clear in any spot, then it's not mixed well. So you just need to make sure it's mixed up. That's all. Should be good. Let's take a look. I'll do it over camera this time, so it's not so us. There you go. Yeah. So yeah, we don't want this going anywhere we don't intend it to. It's another reason why I'm actually wearing gloves, is that if you glue your fingers together with this stuff, you're in a really bad spot. It's similar to super glue. Super glue comes up pretty easily with nail polish remover. Nail polish remover is also known as acetone. Actually, nail polish remover is just a very watered down acetone. So if you ever need to use quote unquote nail polish remover, just go buy a jug of acetone. It'll work better. Well, this did not go as well as I had intended. Didn't intend to get so much on the side, but oh well. But this will be faster. I'm gonna get through this as quickly as possible. Yeah, this is a smarter move. So what we're gonna do is put down 2 coats. First coat's gonna have to dry. It takes about 15-ish minutes. So while we work on other stuff, I'll move it off to the side. You can get away with 1 coat. Maybe for binding to the book like this, maybe we could. Wouldn't be that big of a deal, just to help keep things moving. but you should use 2 if you can. Stuff reeks. I love the, actually, the Creepy Text Theater, I think, is one of my, if not my most favorite ETC show they've come up with. I have to say, Ricky, you guys have been really knocking it out of the park with what you guys have been doing, so hopefully, hopefully the extra help we're trying to find for you will be even more helpful. Alright. Probably the best way to have done this would have been just pour it out into a separate little cup to use instead of popping the top open again. But, oh well. And this brush will be useless after this is done, in case you were wondering. There'll be no recovering from it. It's honestly, it's like, it's really not even worth it. It's why you get chip brushes. It's just, you know, they're throwaway brushes on purpose. I mean, if they're worth saving, you get nice nylon brushes. You don't get cheap horsehair brushes. Yeah, it's certainly a bit smelly. And also, that's the downside, right? Is I'm using a fan to circulate the air, which means it's stinking up the whole house. I don't know if that detail cam's helping you any over there. Let's see if I can point it up a little. Like I said, it's more macro work tonight, right? I think our pouring technique was actually a good one. This surface should be a little easier. We shouldn't need as much because it's not as textured. So there's less technical surface area that we have to worry about. I'm trying to get this thinned out because it wants to dry quicker. I have to say I bought the barge because I saw there was a limited sale on Amazon for it. It was like, you know, they only had a few units that they were going to sell. Otherwise, you got to buy this stuff by the gallon jug. I don't need that much, and it's expensive. You spend like, you know, $80 for it. So I figure this will get us by. I mean, I know where to buy I know in bulk. And actually, if you're doing a full like cosplay costume, it's worth getting that much. You'll go through it for sure. Just make sure you get like a lot of mixing buckets, or what is it? Oh, hold on. There we go. A little stuck. And I probably shouldn't have the can of barge sitting on barge. All right. So all we're kind of waiting for is that once it kind of loses its gloss, it'll be ready to merge. So this bad boy is probably not going to survive much longer. Okay. should probably work on the binding while we're doing this. So let me move this stuff. I'm going to move it just off camera while it dries. Okay, so book binding. When you're the way you bind a book is usually, I don't know if you can see, there's all this stitching where all these little pages are stuck together, and you can kind of see the individual little books. You make like a little mini book of like 5 to 10 pages, and then you punch holes through the back, and you thread it out, and you stack a bunch of those together, and then you stitch those together, and that gives you a bundle like this. And then this gets glued with a small strip of paper, which then fits into the book, and that's glued to the cover of the book, and that's kind of how a book's put together. So for us, we need to re-add glue along the back of this and put sort of a mounting paper that we can use to mount it into the book itself. This is going to largely be hidden, and it doesn't need to be really pretty and precise because we're making a really rough book. So I'm just going to I just ripping out a piece of brown paper bag. And then we're just going to glue this piece here. I think, yeah, about that. And then this is what we'll use to help attach it to the book. So this is a really simple part. It's, whoops, sorry, just banged the... We can always trim up. Doesn't need to be perfect. There we go. So this should be pretty easy actually, or just... So I have the glue gun up pretty hot, which is why actually as soon as we're putting the glue on there, it's bubbling up and steaming. So I'll just put a good amount. So actually help keep it together. Ooh, it's hot. Go figure. So I'm just pressing the after doing the hot glue, just pressing the binder into the paper. And another new face, Savage. Welcome to the stream. We'll have the pretty part back on. You'll see as we start putting this together. So the thing is, you don't usually glue a piece of paper directly to the back of the book. You want the spine to be a little detached so that when the book opens and the cover opens, it has some room to move. So that's why they have this binding piece back here. I'm sure there's a really specific and fancy name for it, but I don't know it. I'm sorry. So what will actually get attached to the cover of the book is this piece of paper. And that's what kind of will help hold it together and hold it in there. And that way these outer pages won't be affected. Otherwise, another way to do it is you get like you take like a corner piece and imagine you have a strip that's along this whole piece here, and you glue it partly to this page and then to the cover. The problem with that though is then it's just this page that's holding it in. If that comes out, the whole thing comes out. So by having this here, it's in contact with all of the back of the book. This is a little off. Do we want to add an extra piece? let's just add an extra piece. We'll just do this. It's fine. I mean, the way this is going to turn out, it's not going to be an issue. We'll trim it down as we need to, but at least it runs the whole length of the spine. And yeah, Camacho, I've burned myself almost every time I use a hot glue gun. They're pretty brutal. Like, if you really, really do it bad enough, it's like you coat the blister with glue, and then when you gotta pull the glue off, you know, that rips the blister with it, which is like the worst thing you can do for a burn. Alright. So that should hold up pretty well, I think. So I'm gonna set this aside. We're gonna check on our book cover. So it's still a little glossy. So Barge, when it dries, I don't know if you can tell, but let's see. It's pretty shiny, but it's, you know, you can see where it really, really is really nasty. I mean, when it's kind of matte finish and you can touch it without it coming up, that's when it's actually dried. And it bonds really well to the surface it dries on. And then after that point, it only really sticks well to Barge. So by painting the two surfaces, both of the glue, while it's wet, really holds on to what it's attached to. But then when we stick them together, it holds on to itself really well. So we just need that to keep finished drying. And it is one of those things that you don't want to rush, because if you rush it and you put it together while it's still a bit wet, it's not going to dry because it needs to evaporate or flash when you have a chemical in your solvent as a solvent that has to evaporate. That's called flashing. So if we seal it up, it has nowhere to go, and the materials we're using aren't really good at absorbing that, so it's pretty much gonna never really set up well. So we really want to give it the time to, you know, set up. But what we are gonna do is I'll show you a good, cool texturing technique that we're going to use on the inside of the book too. So one of the ways we're gonna cover some of our some of our seams and lines for the where we're attaching the book is, like I showed you before, you can unroll cotton. You can actually, it's like a little log. So it's an unrolled cotton ball. And then we can either do it with latex, but I think I'm going to actually use the PVA glue, this stuff, and you soak the glue with it, and then you can work it in as a texture to the surface. And the cool thing is it looks like gore. You know, you can make it look like a burn. You can make it look like just wet, sort of fatty tissue under the skin. But it's sort of a nice way to cover what you're doing, and we just paint it with some acrylics, and it turns out, I think, really nice, and it'll hide a lot of what we're doing. I'm a little curious on whether or not it's going to work around the edge for the latex, because we're going to be mixing materials, but I think if we use a little bit of latex to help smooth the edges, we can kind of transition the latex cover into an acrylic and then blend it pretty well. Because ideally what you want to do is when we open it up, it should look like it should look consistent. It shouldn't look like a fake cover that we stuck on the outside. We want the whole thing to really hold up, that it looks like a Necronomicon as you're paging through it every single page. And I feel like that a lot of times that is what separates the good from the great. It's taking the time to get every little detail down. All right, let's see how this is doing. I think, yeah. See how it's coming off clean? So there's no residue, which is good. Still a little wet there. I think we can get away with one coat on the inside of the book. And then what we'll do is we'll do 2 coats of barge to seal it up with the outside of the book. Because for how it flexes and moves, that should actually be fine. Okay, so this is the front. And this is, yeah, this is done. Okay, so which is the front of the book? I think this one? This way? Uh-oh. See, barely even the edge of it touched and it already started to grab. That's one of the things you have to be careful of. Once you stick barge to barge, especially if you do a couple coats, it's not coming apart. So if you screw it up, it's kind of screwed up. That's also another reason why I really wanted to mark out the edges of the project, because once we start sticking it down, you know, even if I can't readjust, I can't peel it away and reset it. So I'm gonna actually stand up for this. See, it already screwed up a little bit. I'm off the target a tiny bit, but we're still okay. So, pretty much just need to work the contact. You have to be careful though too, because if there's low points or there's gaps, so say you have a shape like this underneath and we want that texture on the surface, if we squash it too flat, it's going to make some weird looking shapes. So definitely want to make sure it's in contact in the low points, but I'm not going to really get too aggressive on the high points because it may actually damage the look. It would look like it deflated, and that's no bueno. But that's pretty good. So now you can see there's a nice sharp delineation in the spine of the book. You can see that. See how it's holding it up? It's holding it pretty good. So we'll just keep that. Pretty cool, huh? Now we're gonna have to, like I said, we're gonna have to wrap. We're gonna have to. Here, hold on a second. There you go. Sorry, guys. Had some domestic obligations I needed to tend to at the moment. But yeah, so if you figure... So what we're going to do now... So this is how this will attach in. And then that should at least give it, it's kind of what the edge of it will look like, right? So that's what I got to figure out how we want to do this now, is how to handle the wrapping the material. Because where it's really going to be key is these ends. Because I kind of want it down there, but then I want to, you know, it's a bit tricky. Ugh, I got like a chemically taste in my mouth. Oh, shit, heat gun. How do we want to do this? It's going to be the other trick too, is we need to get the height just right. Be about there, I think. Yeah, we have to glue down the edges like this. But I almost wonder if this is the next step, and then when we do wrap this, I'm just probably going to have to trim it so that it fits better. I think that'll make for a sturdier book. I think if I don't do it that way, it's going to be more prone to falling apart. Yeah. Now, I'm just got to decide, is this a glue gun fix, or is this another type of glue? I think for sake of doing it quickly and having it hold together, it's going to need to be the glue gun. So let me squish this together a little bit, just so that the starts taking the shape we want it to. I like how the spine turned out. I'm actually really happy with this. Now I keep coming back and forth to it, but I think it's my best one yet. And I have a copy of it too, so we can always do this again. But with the dimensions of the book, it actually really does give it a little more shape. Although, now I'm looking at it, it reminds me of like the last one I did, which is, it looks too rectangular. I almost feel like it needs more dimension, book-like dimensions added to it. Like, imagine if you had like hardware, you know, in the corners, or like a little clasp, or you know how like on really fancy decorative books they have, you know, they kind of have this inscription and stuff on there, and I don't know, we'll see. I guess we'll see how it's really like fully stuck together, how it looks, but there's always a way you can get better. I mean, ideally, if you're making something like this, perfection would be something that looks so terrible and horrible that it gives you nightmares and you can never create it again. So if we're still able to sleep easily, then we're still short of where we should be to be perfect. All right, sorry, I'm trying to run through my head on how we're going to approach this. So, oops, sorry. I'm thinking I may just get a separate boom arm for this detail camera just to help make it a little more mobile. Okay. So I think if we glue in the back piece first, this guy, throw some hot glue on it, squish it into the book, and then let the glue settle, that should get us where we want to go to start, and then we'll glue the other side. So first things first, I think we need just a little bit of glue under the flap. Do that. Just need a new glue stick. And I picked the grocery bag paper just because it's brown and dirty and it's a different look texture, and you can rip it and make it a little different. Okay, so here we go. Just want the glue to hold it in place to start. So we're going to move quickly while it cools. Make sure that we're not too high, not too low. Thanks, guys. You're all really supportive. I appreciate it. I'm seriously, anytime I say, like, I would not have gotten this far if it wasn't for your support on this. Like, I don't prioritize stuff for myself very well. So having your support and sort of kind of the peer pressure to do it is what's really keeping me on track with it. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So you can kind of see here, we'll probably have to clean it up. May have to snag a razor and just trim the edge. But you can see that, you know, when you're talking about a book binding, this doesn't really look that obtrusive, you know? It kind of looks almost like it should be there. So we'll just, you know, tear some more there. And then this side, we'll just do the same thing. I'll just close the book on it, and then ideally it should all work. So let's just block down this tag a little bit. Just this extra flap. And then we can always glue down the little sort of leftover edges too, no problem. So there we go. That's this side. So I think putting it together in layers like this will really help us kind of weave the different pieces together better. Okay. Now, if everything went well, it should. Cool. It's a little stiff, but I think that's okay. I think this will actually help it be a little sturdier. So if you open the book, yeah, there we go. I don't know if you can tell, but you can kind of see how it has that hollow space underneath. And that's what you want, otherwise you can't really lay the book flat because it makes that arch. So that's what kind of helps it stay sort of flexible. And then from the top, I think that looks pretty good. We obviously need to clean up the edges though. Fantastic. So next we're going to start wrapping, or do we want to wrap first? So this is a good question. If we want to wrap the edges and then paint the inside, or do we want to paint the inside and then wrap the edges and then maybe add another kind of blend layer over the top of that to really smooth it out? Because if we just, you know, if we just fold down, it'll give you an idea what the edge is going to look like. So there's that, and then this will be, you know, squished over. Come on. It's not perfect, but you can kind of get the idea. Really get that as a nice tight edge. So that's really the width of the, whoops, detail cam. Why for you suicide? Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's a paint. We gotta do the painting first, and then we'll wrap it. Do I have my razor blades here? Because I need to kind of use the blade to rough this up. Do some little trimming here. Hold on. Ooh. Just clean up these loose threads. Okay, that's good. So these are just the leftover threads from the process. I mean, we could leave them there and I'm sure it'll look fine, but I almost feel like it does make it look a little too glued in, so I just want to pull them out. Because we can weather the inside of the book with acrylic and stuff like that to kind of hide a good bit of these flaws, but I think this in itself is probably good enough. Yeah, that's a really good point, getting the color down underneath it so that, yeah, if it ever pulls up or lifts, that'll help keep it there. So I like how this is a bit of an irregular shape in it. This one is a little too... I don't know, maybe I should have left that extra flap in there. I kind of want to minimize it a little bit. That should be fine. This is the front. Okay. And the back. Okie dokie. This is where it's going to get messy. So the first things first, we're just going to get the texture down with the glue, and actually just need to get some more cotton. Because what's going to happen is while I'm using the glue on my hands, I'm going to get furry mitts. There's also a little bit of another way to go, and this is a bit of a cheater way to go faster. It's a little more of a latex trick, but I think these are called Viva paper towels is the brand. And if you notice, there's no pattern on it. So when you're soaking, we do cotton where we soak it with latex or we soak it with acrylic or soak it with glue to get a nice, like, sort of meaty texture. You can use like Viva paper towels to do that as well because they don't have a pattern. So you don't get like little floral print skin. So that's another way if you ever need to rapidly cover. And that's something we could do where I could just take a whole sheet and work a texture into it. But I think for this, we'll go the cotton ball route. And you can do both too, by the way. Both of them are really good. It's actually a really, really, really cheap way. I'm going to show you right now, which is a really awesome, super cheap way to make really fantastic looking texture to any of your projects. And it's also very flexible, which is also important too. I think a lot of times, if you're not really thinking about how the material will be used, you'll forget that it needs to hold up to certain sort of strains. Maybe that's wearing. So if you have something that is constantly being abrased against, then you need to consider that. In this case, with the inside of the book, the book cover, even though it's relatively rigid, if it flexes and bends, stuff could pop off. So by getting a cheap reinforcement fiber material like this, one, it helps keep the cost down, but two, it gives us something that is add a little bit of a sturdy material for texture that is also flexible. And by using a glue to soak it, you don't need to worry about it sticking because you're using glue, right? So it's just kind of it's an interesting way to approach your projects. And you'll see too, if you fluff and you pull them out, you can actually get sort of interesting textures. And that's kind of what, when you're doing texture stuff, is you really want to make sure you're careful to not make it look textured, fake and textured, I should say. So Tight Bond is the wood glue that I use, and like I said, it's a PVA glue, PVA glue. There's an L in there. Polyvinyl acetate, not to be confused with PVC, which is polyvinyl C something. And it's pretty standard school glue. It's pretty non-toxic, pretty safe, water soluble. and the higher grade version of it is used on furniture. Actually, it'd probably be really smart before we do this to cover this half of the book, because if something happens in this snapshot, I don't want all of a sudden to have the page glued down. So this is just to help keep it a little clean. So we'll just tuck that just to help. There we go. Okay. Don't really need the hot glue gun going, but I also don't want to reach under and mess with it. So first things first, I'm going to just get the glue down onto the surface. And this will help make sure that we stick every little spot that we need to. And yeah, it's fine to use your fingers on this stuff. Like I said, it's wash off in water. It's pretty safe. I don't know if you did it when you were a kid, but I paint layers of white glue and like build it up really thick till it made like a fake skin, and then you could like make little blisters out of it. So really, this is where it's going to get messy on your hands, but it's okay. You want to be able to have your hands like work with it. So I'm just going to start spreading this cotton out over the piece, and you'll see what starts happening to it while we work. So right now we just need coverage. I need it sticking down to it. And it's alright if it pills up and it kind of gets more strandy, because the more that you have those pieces together, it'll actually look like veins and stuff like that. Make sure that you don't need to do anything important all of a sudden, like if you have to use your phone or anything like that, wear gloves, because it's primarily the reason why I wear gloves when I'm working, is just so I can strip them off if some emergency needs my attention. So yeah, it's like cotton candy. So, and then now, I'm just gonna kind of keep working the cotton into it. Yeah. Need a little more. Once this actually works for you, you can use it kind of to, wet your fingers a little too. Now, I'm trying to do this on a large scale all at once. You can do it tiny little pieces if that's how you want to go. That's fine. That detail cam's a bit blown out, isn't it? See if I can give you a little better view. I'm sorry. I'm being very rude. Geez, is there any detail there to see? Doesn't really look like it. Let me see if I can fix that. Is that better? If that sucks, let me know. Or if you want to go back to that overhead cam, that's fine too. But so you can kind of see how it's, and you don't really have to worry about the color of this stuff. I know it's really yellow, but we're going to be painting over it, so it's fine. And if you are concerned you need something that's a little more color accurate, then yeah, you can use just white glue. It doesn't need to be that strong. I just have a bunch of this stuff and it's relatively cheap. You could also mix color pigments into this. Acrylic is also a water-based pigment, so the you can mix acrylic paint no problem, and it'll add to it. You can also use acrylic. I mean, you can even just use the cotton to texture up the acrylic, and that would be fine. So oh yeah, that's much better. So I actually did bring the heat gun for this part, because it would actually be a good addition. So I don't know if it's easier to tell, but you can just kind of see the texture that it gives it when you do this. And this is going to be super durable. Yeah, and don't be afraid to get rid of cotton too. Like this piece here, it's already kind of balled up, and we'll see if we can work it through, but kind of want to start sculpting it a little bit into stuff that looks like veins and arteries, you know. Connect the pieces, make them look like they're branching off from each other. That'll kind of help it feel a little more organic. Because if it looks like just a bunch of like boogers stuck to it, it's not going to give you the right kind of organic feel, right? Maybe it would have been better just to add soaked glue down as we went instead of trying to do it like this. I think it's going to all look the same, but it's, I don't know, it just feels like it's a little more of a hassle. Sorry, I'm a little off mic. Oh, that looks cool. Like that, like that, like that. Dragging that cotton across really just seems to give it a cool effect. Maybe while we're doing this, we don't paint even this part. We wait until we add the latex down. Use the same method of cotton to kind of help smooth it, and then that way we'll get similar texture, and then the painting will go over all the top of that. And then that way you'll get a good consistency of color. Although I don't know how well the oil-based latex acrylic rubber approach is going to work. Although I've done acrylic coloring as well, so we'll see. It'll be a little bit of a learning experience, I think. Let's see if the wide cam shows it better. Thanks for swinging by, Cam. I hope we see you tomorrow. I'm gonna try and get tomorrow in too. We're gonna do a little bit of a sprint just to get this done this week, and I should like to be giving it out next Monday. If not next Monday, maybe even this Friday. Maybe if we get enough done tonight and tomorrow, I can give it on Friday, and I'll see if I can take my camera and get some recording of it for you guys. But thanks for stopping in, dude. Appreciate it. So So I'm just trying to break up the clumps, you know? I'm just kind of doing this to get a little bit of a rolled up texture for it. Yeah, that's not really working. If I had a little water to smooth it with, that'd be good. Although rubbing alcohol would probably be good too, so it evaporates faster. Usually anything that you can smooth with water, you can actually smooth with rubbing alcohol. But then it dries faster and doesn't soak in as much, which could be more advantageous. So. Let's add a little to the outside. I mean, when this wraps, so what we're going to need to do is add barge to the outside to hold it. So this is all got to dry. That's the one downside to what we're doing, is I kind of have to let this dry. I can't close the book and work on the other side until this dries. So let me pick my fingers clean a little bit, and then I will get the heat gun and we will try to accelerate the process. And then we're also, I need to think, how are we going to do the folding near the top? Because this, you know, will fold down okay, but how it does over the spine of the book, I might have to snip it and kind of tuck a little. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking, like, there's actually is a lot of texture on this, and it's kind of getting blown out by the lighting. I still need to figure out a better lighting solution for this stuff. Like, sculpting having a really hard light works really well, because you can see more detail and texture that way, but the clay is also a bit of a gray, darker gray, so it kind of balances out. But then once we switch over to painting and all that stuff, it's too much of a hot spot from the lamp, so I don't know. If my finger looks jaundice, it's like yellow. I mean, come on. Ugh. Alright, so glue gun's gonna get unplugged, heat gun's gonna get plugged in, and then we're going to go from there. So here's a question, is what about time? Is this good stream time for you guys? Should I be trying to push this up to like maybe starting an hour earlier? I know it's a bit on the late side and I run up right up to midnight. I don't really have much time after that, so I wouldn't mind the extra, but it also seems like I coincide with a bunch of other streams, and by going a little later, it gives us a little more time to get more people on. I don't know. Ugh. Alright. Gotta stop picking glue. If I suddenly go offline, you'll know it's because I probably pulled the wrong plug out. Alright. Definitely the downside to this stuff is you are literally having to watch paint and glue dry. So a lot of times, you know, if I'm working on this on just my own time, what I'll do is I'll just do something like this, prop it, set it up, and just go leave it in the other room and either get back to it in a few hours or, you know, the next day. So in a little bit of a way, we're under slightly false sort of a false what's it called? A little bit of a false environment because we're accelerating things a little more than usual. But, oh well. Maybe that's actually a little more of a realistic environment. I mean, if you're working on professional level craft stuff, you got to get your crap done fast, right? So if you hit stuff with a little too much heat, it starts to bubble, which is potentially a desirable effect. Oh, well, I appreciate the flexibility. I mean, it's I really am on the fence on timing wise, on whether it's earlier or later, because, you know, either will work. I'm more interested in the long-term health of this community, considering you guys have been so awesome about it. So if shuffling it up an hour is actually a win for everybody, then brilliant. I'd rather go with that. So far I don't feel like we've had a lot of people dropping out saying it's been too late, but we'll see. I don't know. Is there a way to do polls on Twitch? Ooh, look at that. That's interesting. Hitting it with the heat gun to kind of puff it up a little bit. What am I hooked on? It's good idea. Get some empirical evidence on timing. See that bubble? There, let me see if I can flip. See, I can make it bubble up. Stuff like that could be something desirable. You know, it could be something you want. I did that on a piece where I coated it with the skin and then I hit it with a heat gun to make it bubble up, and it actually made it kind of this cool warty looking texture. I have to be careful though, because by heating the outside like that to where it forms the skin, still leaves it all mushy gushy on inside. But let's see if I close this down. And the other thing I have to be careful of is I am heating the latex. It's warm on the outside, so I can't imagine that's a good thing. But oh well, what are you gonna do? So I mean, that's okay for now. I think it's at least a good base to start with. So let's see. So yeah, I mean, if you did a skin, right? So you know he's saturated with the glue. You throw down something like this, and then you kind of crumple and mush and like do this to get it all in, and it's another way you get texture in. You could do that as a base, and then throw down cotton over the top of it. You know, you have a lot of options. I actually should have done that. I should have done that as a base and then added the cotton, but I don't want to make the textures too dissimilar. So we'll just kind of keep with what we're doing right now. And that's consistency across your project can actually be very difficult and can ruin your look if you're not careful. Say you changed a brand of paints, even though if they're both fire engine red, you may get just a slight enough difference to where it looks janky and it doesn't look consistent. So it can be a little difficult to keep quality up like that across all the projects. So this wrap is going to be interesting. So will the heat potentially cause adhesive problems? It really depends. So one of the potential issues with causing that heat through the book is that, yeah, if there's a small pocket of air that expands from the heat, it may separate. And then also, because it's so warm, it may dry out the glue. And yeah, you very much could have adhesion problems. In this case, on this backside, since the glue, we're drying it from one side and it's not holding anything together, it's just holding itself down, I don't worry about it for this texture, but it is certainly something to consider on this side. But I think once we're all attached around, we'll be okay. So I'm just trying to think how we're going to do this. I think we can probably just kind of do the same thing we just did. Maybe I'll take a little bit of a different approach. It might be a little more effective, I think. So let's go ahead and kind of mask off our area. And then we'll do this. And one thing to note, though, is I do need to cut these streams at 2 hours. I've noticed that when I run long, I'm just side loading it from Twitch, and it splits them on YouTube, and so I really want to contain these things down, keep them within the time frame, and it also means I don't end up creeping my bedtime back later. I mean, I don't want to rush this project because it's really important to me that it does look right when we're done. So the difference we're going to take with this one is I'm going to work less broad strokes and layers and more just kind of work our way through the piece. Work the layers down that way. And then hopefully this will give us a little bit of a better effect. It may be messier too. This could be a disaster. Yeah, it's actually less effective. Okay. We do need to get that base layer of glue down first. Good test. It's too bad I don't have another chip brush handy. It'll make life easier. Oh well. Poor planning on my part. My bad. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of scientific methodology, empirical data, basing decisions off of a consensus of well-designed and formulated tests. So that's what happens if we don't unroll a cotton ball. Let's just let it string out. See if we can actually do anything interesting, or if it's just going to be too much of a wad, which is likely to. We may have to scrap. But yeah, I always find it really frustrating when you hear news stories or stuff like that where there's one weird little preliminary study that comes out and they're like, oh, are bugs really sentient aliens from other planets? Scientists are baffled. That's always the fun caveat. Scientists, if according to the news, are constantly baffled. It's like, no, what does the broad general consensus say? Because there are a lot of ways that we fool and lie to ourselves and interpret stories, and anomalies happen, and find correlations between things that doesn't necessarily mean that something is caused by it. And so how do you cut through all that noise? And the way you cut through that noise is by creating a system of proof. And if your interest is in being in line with truth and accuracy, and less about trying to just be right, then you'll always be in the right spot. You know, if you spend your whole time thinking that something's, you know, your special glue mix that you're making is not toxic and it's totally safe and it works the best, but it turns out that the stuff is giving you cancer, you know, sorry if you feel like a fool about it, but, you know, it's probably better to just not do that. Or maybe a method that you're using, you know, there's better methods that are out there. And, you know, when you find that, then you realize that, yeah, you're not doing it the right way. I'd rather be correct than try to prove myself to be right. Okay. I wasn't really paying attention to what I did differently, but I feel like this method is working very well. I don't know, it's a little bit of a diatribe. There's so much of that kind of crap you see on Facebook, you know, where something comes in and it's, yeah. Won't go into it. It starts getting into some really, I guess you could say, political stuff, and I don't want to alienate or upset people. But it's frustrating when, you know, the time it takes to explain why something is not correct or right is, you know, 10 times longer than it is for somebody to just say something that sounds right but is totally completely wrong. So, but whatever. But yeah, I think it's always good to try and base your decisions off of actual empirical data, actual experimentation. So I like to do material testing and material mixing, and a part of the way I'll approach that is if I figure, hey, if I mix two things together, I'll get this other result. And if it seems to work well, I'll try and vary the amounts and see sort of if I can get a better or worse, and then also see if there's anything similar that I can mix with it. And I try and test the different options of my solution in a bunch of different ways to find the most optimal solution and see what's consistent and regular. And there's, what was it? Tiger Woods had a really cool saying that I think his driving force, you know, aside from deciding to cheat on his supermodel wife with probably not impressive girls, he said, I can and I must improve. And I think it's a very succinct and pithy statement, you know. We are never off the journey of self-improvement, and there's always a way to get better, faster, and stronger. Okay. So this actually works a lot better. I wasn't really paying attention to why. Let's see. What do I think about the whole Gamergate situation? You'll have to catch me up. What is the Gamergate situation? I don't know if I know it by that word, that phrasing. And my fingers are covered in glue, so I can't really Google it really quick at the moment. I know there was the only thing I can think that rings a bell like that was the whole thing on Hearthstone where you had one of the players cheat, but yeah. Let's take a quick look. Gamergate. Okay, let's see. What is Gamergate? It's misogyny under the banner of journalistic integrity. When was this written? So this was the last couple weeks. Is this that chick that was basically like sort of really going for the whole, hey, super femme, I need money to be a female journalist, and so sponsor my Indiegogo, and then she just kind of went AWOL with the money? Is that what it was? I'll have to. I think I probably have to educate myself a bit better before I can address it specifically. I'd hate to miss the mark on things that have already been said. I mean, in general, it's I feel like trying to seek the truth of a situation is a bit like trying to balance a broom, on your hand. That it's much easier to let your opinion or the broom fall to one side or the other in an extreme. But to really stay on the truth, it's just the constant sort of fine adjustment to stay balanced at the truth of the matter. And often, a lot of this stuff it's either a misunderstanding or misinterpretation or flat out just complete wrong take of something that happened. So so what you're saying is like a very strong, staunch feminist was caught cheating? I mean, so a human being was being a human. If I remember right, statistically, men and women cheat at the same rate. There really is a very low difference between infidelity in a relationship. It's just there's a bit of a perception difference between it. Oh, so she was using sex to get... See, I always find that really interesting because a girl using sex to get an advantage. If guys could do that, it would make it all the more awesome. I think we just have less opportunity to do so. I mean, yeah, you can see See, that's a really weird one, because I've heard people say the same way, and I've actually known somebody in particular who made it very clear that she had no problem with using sex to advance herself. It was... Some people will argue that if a woman has very high sought-after sexuality, that it actually is empowering for her, and if she decides to use it for her own gain, then she's in control of it, and that it's, casual sexual encounters are something that are excused, if not even applauded, in men, but are frowned upon for women. So using their sexuality, which is something they have a power over, in a way that benefits them, is in essence hypocritical. So being a feminist is about pushing back against that dualistic stereotype. Because given the exact same situation, if a guy was doing the same thing and able to, sleeping with the head of a female, I mean, seriously, flip the genders. If, say, there was a female editor-in-chief at Kotaku, and one of the male indie game devs was sleeping with her to get better reviews, what would your opinion of that person be? Would it be the same of a girl doing the same thing? And if it's the same, then good for you, and if it's not, then why is it different? I think at some point you really have to assess what your own, what are your beliefs on the situation. I think a lot of times people have a visceral reaction, and it's not so much because it fits within some internal consistency, but it's because they personally are made to feel a visceral sort of discomfort over something, and that when you take the time to apply it in a alternative fashion, that you actually see that maybe maybe it is a little off. So given that question is like, what is your view of sexuality and using sex to get something? Prostitution would tell you that sex can be traded for value, right? And how appropriate is it to trade sex for value? I mean, you're taking the girl out on a date, you're taking her to dinner and to movies, and you're courting her, and are you really thinking, oh, I'm just doing this because I dig this person? Or are you thinking, hey, I'm hoping maybe I'll get into her pants someday? I mean, I would venture to believe that there's probably a spectrum of people in that range, and we've probably all moved between different levels of that as well. So if sex has value, where is it appropriate and where is it inappropriate to trade sex for value? Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised people would respond viscerally to that. I think by and large, that's a default, right? A woman sleeping to her way to the top is a bad thing. Jeez. Sorry, barge. The stuff that dried around the rim is like like a rope. Savage Dan. Very quiet, sir. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to read into it. I'll have to read up on it, because it actually is very interesting. Feminism, there's a lot of that. And I would say that, feminism and equality, those are always very interesting topics, because kind of you could draw similarities between it and affirmative action, where you are saying that there is such an inequality that there has to be some sort of resolution to it. When you say, yes, everybody should be equal and it shouldn't be a problem and yada, 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 but then there is something like this that comes up where, based on gender, the reaction is going to be completely different because of the gender. Is there really equality? And I think, when you're highlighting that kind of stuff, And then the same thing too, there's a lot of people that will believe that affirmative action is outdated and unnecessary and works against equality, because you are in essence favoring somebody based on their race, which you could argue is racism. However, if there is still an inequality where percentage of a given race is not equally represented in the hiring stats and admission stats or any sort of cross section. So, for example, if race had no change in preference or affected anything, and say that African Americans were 10% of a given population, then you would expect to see them represented in 10% of any college, any workforce, any sort of special group, any wealth structure as well. What's up, Red? You just walked in on a bit of a political discussion. So, this is give you a quick look at what you missed. So we're just working on getting the cover stuck down, cleaning up the inside pages. Anyway, but yeah, I'll have to look into it. I'll definitely have to look into and see what's going on there, because I'm sure there's a very interesting level of depth that we could easily go into on the finer points of it. Alright, so next step here. This is still kind of drying, but it's okay. It's not going to stop us from working ahead. I'm going to be coating this inside edge with barge so that we can roll this over to it and lock it down. And I think I'll take it right up to the edge, and I'll just let it flop over and trim down what we need to. But this should at least keep us moving forward. I mean, we have got about another 20 minutes, so I think we should be able to at least stick down some of the outside. And thanks, Mario. I really appreciate it. Kind of been missing you guys on the stream, but there's been a lot of awesome folk who have come and given their support. Even internet famous people like Ricky. You might have heard of him. Alright. So I'm just going to use the brush that comes in there. And hopefully I don't get cancer. No. Now I have to be really careful when we're working on edges like this, because a little bit of glue could get around to the front, and if I move and shift the book into a glue blob, I'm going to ruin the finish. So I could probably do this in a smarter way. I could probably spend less and eat better too, but you know, what are you gonna do? Life's hard. Yeah. This stuff is gay. It's all gay. Now hopefully I'm putting it on a little thinner, so it should hopefully dry better. I know we talked about doing a couple coats, but I think with the latex sort of plan that I have for it, that's going to help seal it up too. I think we'll be okay. The corners are going to be a little bit of a problem. I'm probably going to have to snip them and fold them a little bit to make it work. But, oh well. Let's try and move through this. I wonder if the heat gun would be a good or bad idea. If that would help it accelerate a little bit. Let me do this. Just make sure we set it down so we don't set it into a spot. I really do need a bigger workstation though. I think I'm going to be picking up a spare garage that's really near our place, and I think I can find a Wi-Fi extender, and if I get that out there I can actually recreate sort of a shop out there and have a lot more room and be able to use power tools. So we might do that. So what happens if I were to brush this on my hands? Barge is not instant dry. It's kind of like it's a rubber cement on steroids, and it's used for leather and shoe repair. Actually, you have to paint both surfaces that you want to stick together, and once it sticks, it's pretty durable. It's probably one of the stronger glues out there that you can get your hands on. So you wouldn't want to get it on your hands, because if you touched the surface that it was glued to, that would be bad news. Very bad news. As in, you Gosh, I don't even know what you use. I think you use acetone. I don't know if you've ever super glued your hands together. It would be like that, but worse. Okay. This just needs to dry a little more, and then we'll... Still a little tacky. Sorry, glue and paint layers are just the waiting game. We got really lucky up to this point. A lot of the stuff that we've done has been pretty aggressive type stuff. I mean, the glue or the color paint we used on the outside was ridiculously fast drying. So one of the ways I can kind of test how well the glue is seeing if it just holds to the edge. Because it's such a thin, narrow piece, which it's holding to. So maybe it is good. Good to go. Let's see. Okay, so you see like this corner is going to be a problem for us. So I'm just going to need to trim that corner down. Trimming something with glue on it is not easy. Let's try farther back on the scissors. May have to do kind of a weird fold. Alright, I think we're okay. So let's get you flipped down. Okay. I'm gonna do the... how do I want to do this? I'm just gonna wing it. Alright. And this needs to come up. It's not perfect, but it'll get us by for this. So we just want to work our way down the line. Just don't worry about the color difference right now. So what kind of paint? So the painting that we did for the outside is actually a bit of a special mix that I found on a website called Monster Makers, and they focus on just sort of do-it-yourself home project, and where you find anywhere from like entry level to prosumer level ways to make creatures and stuff at home. And the sort of highly toxic but effective method that they recommend is a mix of a Coleman camp fuel. It's also known as naphtha, is the official name. You mix that with some rubber cement and oil paint, and it bites into latex very nicely. But it is also smelly and toxic, so you have to be careful. Man, that edge of the book really did hold up pretty well. So I think once we go to make the adjustments to it, it's going to actually work out really nicely. So, yeah, nice clean cover, you know, if you take it right up to that point, right? You know, another option too is we put a plate in, something that just overlaps and it just fits down as a plate. That's how most books are actually put together. We could do something like that actually with the with something like this. Just lay it in and make it look kind of a little gross. It's an option. Let me see how this fold is doing. So this is what concerns me the most, is how this guy is laying in. And I know once we flip this down, it's gonna really need some tweaking. No, let's keep going with what we're doing. So we'll do barge on this side now. This is gonna be a little more extensive because this is gonna fold pretty far up, right? So this will fold about there, and this will fold about there. It's all good. All right. I think I've mentioned it before, but I actually have a little bit of a a glue fetish. I very specifically, I love finding new types of glue to work with. I tend to go out of my way to buy it when I find it. I don't know why. There's like an art to sticking stuff to other stuff. Glues can like really make or break your project. I mean, having something that works versus something that fully falls apart on you, you know? All right. Oh. It's cooled off tonight, but it is still way too warm. Yeah, Gorilla Glue is pretty awesome actually, because it is a oh shoot, what's it called? I forgot this last time too. It's a it's not polyester. It's I'm trying to remember what that type of glue it is. What's the material I'm trying to think of? Oh well, I'll have to look it up. But Gorilla Glue actually works super well as a casting material. The foaming sort of void filling properties that it has make it very useful if you need to make sort of a rigid foam mold of something. Polyurethane, that's what I'm thinking of. So the white Gorilla Glue that they've released, it's like sort of it's the clear version or white version of what they have. Actually, I don't know what it is about the formulation, but it has a much finer cell structure that it foams up with. And it actually can give you really, really nice results. And if you have the right kind of mold that you're putting it into, it really does pick up detail pretty well, and it almost kind of gives it a little bit of a skin, like a shiny skin to it. So yeah, Gorilla Glue as a casting material, definitely recommend. All right. Just trying to get the tack of this down. So here's a question for you. If you can open the lid of a container of glue, does that mean it's a bad glue? Sorry, my cat's freaking out. He found like a little rubber band or something. All right. I've not been as careful about keeping this glue off my hands, so I must be careful when I check to see if it's dried, lest I become one with our Necronomicon. I know there shouldn't be any glue in between the container and the lid, but it's that can be a little bit of a difficult thing to maintain. Especially that barge. I don't really have a super solid way to do it, but I think the metal, it's not really designed to glue metal to metal, so it kind of pulls up from it. It really does need a little bit of that organic porous material. Barge really is meant to fix flexible materials, slightly porous flexible materials together. That's kind of its strong point. Which, again, going back to it, that's why I like different adhesives, because you figure out what works for what, and when you find the right one, it's really cool, you know. I don't know, I'm just being silly. Alright. Stuff is stuck to stuff. So, same test. If it holds up on the edge, it's ready to glue over. Still not ready. Just gotta let it sit. Sorry. So, barge, when it's done well, will take even fine little edges together. So by folding it up on itself, I'm pushing it against the very fine edge of the book, and if it doesn't stick, then it's not ready to be. It's not dry enough yet. La, waiting game. My apologies, guys. It's an unfortunate part of the process. Made way too much cotton rolls. See, I don't know what we're going to do with coloring on the inside. I mean, really, I just want to bring it in together. Maybe even just match the browns a little bit. I don't know. It's getting there. Alright. Yeah. Seems like it's holding up. That's okay. Alright. So now you can see where we're running into trouble is up along the top here. So I'm going to have to trim it just to kind of wrap it correctly, which is fine. I wanted to make sure that the rest of it fit well, because that's such a minor little spot, you're not going to see it as much as you do the other parts. Oh, this is really thick down here. Is this going to even stick down? Oh, the joys of barge. Of course it'll stick down. Look at that. Alright. So we're going to do this. Cover it at just a little bit of an angle. Trim this edge a little. I almost feel like I want to take maybe a little bit of this orange edge off. I don't know, I guess we're covering it. I shouldn't risk it, because if I cut it too short, it's going to look bad, and, you know, we'll just go down a path that we don't want to go down. So we will just continue as is. I like that some of the stitching came across. Okay, so this one had a little bit more. I kind of skewed it a little bit because I wanted to have the face a little more center, but I think this will give you an idea of what the dimensions of the book are. Still need to clean up these edges, but there's a so you get kind of a nice wrapping effect. It looks very uniform, which is good. Feels good. It's not tacky or sticky, so the paint did well. I don't think it needs any sort of touch-ups on the outside. So it's all inside work now. And then there's the edge. That looks like a junky old book. and it's solid, I think. Hopefully pieces don't fall out, right? Cool. Alright, so let's clean up these top pieces. Get them a little more put together. Work has been good, sir. Thank you very much for asking. We got a new boss. There's a lot of new kind of good things moving along. You know, dare I say that Machinima may actually be in a really good direction. We got some exclusive stuff. There's just, you know, there's a lot of good direction that's changed, and sometimes, you know, it's easy to lose sight of that stuff when you've been so nose down in work for a while. But I think when you stop and really look at what's changed and what's going on, it's really good stuff. I mean, really, some of the big changes too are just how the company has been treating its you know, its network and working with people and making it a really important priority to just work in a sort of helpful servicing sort of way. It's really good to sort of hear that being important, you know. It's a lot easier to support the guys internal. But anyway, that's talking a lot of public shop. I don't know. Good stuff. Good times. They just announced that we secured a deal for an animated Avengers thing, which I thought was really cool. It's Avengers, right? Production programming got a new boss that is dude's got like super impressive background. You know, dude's like done a lot of crazy stuff, or a lot of really impressive stuff, and so I think we're gonna learn a lot from him, so that's really good too. Sounds like there's some very specific stuff coming down the pipe for our deal with Warner Brothers, from what it sounds like, which is good. We're doing some stuff with Twitch, helping them out, which is good. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I can't really talk about. That's good, but do know that we are working very specifically to hire some very quality editors for our amazing team. Sorry, I think I'm doing this in my lap. I'm just trying to clean up this corner here. I think the best way to do this is just fix it with a little bit of hot glue. Oh, well, I kind of can't do that, can I? Because I unplugged my glue gun. So, I'm gonna have to do a little barge. This is gonna be tricky. It's in a tricky spot. It was actually really crazy chasing the not chasing the cup. Deck Wars has been running for the past couple days and has been over 40,000 concurrents. It put Machinima up on the #1 slot for Twitch for quite a bit. It was really impressive. I mean, those guys did a really good job putting that together and getting that as much traction as it did. That was dumb. It worked out well, but that was dumb. It was dripping, so I flipped it over, and that little glob of glue could have just gone in any direction. Fortunately, it worked out for us, but it shouldn't have, to be honest. All right. So I'm trying to work the glue in there without sticking the whole thing together. Oh well. How are you and the lady doing? I was just talking to Albert a bit today about maybe doing the Queen Mary thing, but it sounds like his girly is not as big on the scaries